Okay, so in the last class, we had learned up to multiple access protocols. Okay, so we had learned what are the different types of MAC protocols and where they can possibly be used. So today we are going to start with LANs or local area networks. Now, if you remember, we had learned about something called MAC address. This terminology had come earlier in the classes. Okay, and at that time I told you that we learn MAC addresses when we are studying about link layer protocols. Okay, so you have known by now that every host on the network is identified with the help of a 32-bit IP address, if assuming that we are using IPv4. Okay, now this is a network layer address for the interface. Okay, now why it is required? Because it helps in forwarding the packet that has been received by the layer 3 device or the network layer device. Okay, so please remember this. When I say layer 3, it's network layer, so it is going from bottom up. So 5 is considered as layer 1, layer 2 is data link layer, and so on and so forth. Now, what is MAC address? Okay, it is also known as LAN address or physical address or even Ethernet address. Okay, so first of all, what is the function of MAC address? So MAC address is used locally to get a frame from one interface to another interface which is physically interconnected. Okay, so it can be within the same subnet, right? So basically what's happening, that with the help of a MAC address, you are basically sending the frame from one interface to another interface which is physically connected. Okay, so if I have to say it, a MAC address actually identifies the particular interface. Okay, now how it identifies, that we will see in the next slides. Now, MAC is a 48-bit address. Okay, and it is there for most LANs, and for most LANs it is burned in the ROM of the network interface card. Okay, it can sometimes be set by the software also, but most of the times it is basically hardwired. That means it is burnt in the ROM of the NIC. So that means what, every so if I consider that every device has a MAC address, so that means every device has to have a unique MAC address. Okay, because that identifies the device. All right. So here we are considering that the interface that we are basically looking at, that has a corresponding MAC address, and that is burned in the ROM of the NIC. Okay, and it is this 48-bit MAC address is represented by a hexadecimal notation. Okay, and each of these numericals will represent 4 bits. Sorry, numerals, not numericals. Okay, so now let's take a look at this. So here we have 4 different hosts. Okay, and they are connected. So now each interface on this entire LAN, it is represented with the help of the IP address also, 32-bit IP address, as well as a 48-bit MAC address. Okay, this is a unique address. Okay, so we have a locally unique IP address because, as we have already studied, that it can be different outside also. Sorry, like with the help of NAT, what we have seen, that locally we can have a unique set of IP addresses, but for the outside world it can be just represented as a single interface with the help of a NAT router. So that is why these IP addresses which are given here, they are just locally unique in this LAN. Okay, and the MAC address, however, are unique for each one of these interfaces. Okay. So how will these addresses be allocated? So the administration of these address allocations is done by IEEE. I think most of you have heard about IEEE, Institute of Electrical and Electronics Engineers. Okay, so that is what IEEE stands for. Now, the manufacturer who is going to manufacture the device, he is going to buy portions of these MAC address space. Okay, why? Because we know that MAC address has to be unique because it is getting hardware. It is getting burned into the ROM there. So that is why manufacturers buy portions of MAC address space so that they can assure uniqueness of this MAC address. So this is just an analogy that has been given here. So here it is given as the social security number from the US. From the, if you just consider it from the US point of view, a MAC address would be like a social security number. From Indian point of view, it will be like an Aadhaar number, right? So it basically uniquely identifies each and every device. Okay, an IP address is like a postal address. Okay, it can change. Now when we had learnt about IP addresses, we had learnt about hierarchical addressing and all that, right? Because there were too many devices and how to handle that was becoming very difficult. So that is why we came up with certain ways of classful addressing, then classless addressing. So all of this we came up with. But MAC addresses are simply flat. Okay. Now what will happen? So these MAC addresses, they provide or they move interface from one LAN to another. Okay, so what does this make? The MAC, because of the flatness of the MAC addresses, it helps in portability. All right. Now, if you recall that IP addresses are definitely not portable. Okay, so whatever subnet your node is attached to, you will get an IP address corresponding to that, right? Whereas for MAC addresses, this is not the case. Okay. Now, what if you do not know the MAC address of the destination? Okay, so how do you determine what is the MAC address of the notation? If you want to send some data, if you want to identify the particular host, definitely you will be requiring the MAC address, right? So how do you want to, how do you find out what is the MAC address? But it is given that you know the IP address of the host, destination host. So this is done with the help of an ARP table, which is supposed to or which is assumed to reside within each of these interfaces. Okay, so here each of these interfaces is just connected to a node. So here in this figure, it is given as that there is an ARP table at each of these nodes. Okay, now this ARP table, what does it give you? This ARP table basically has entries of like what is the MAC address of and what is the corresponding IP address of a given host. Okay, so if you have a corresponding IP address, what is the corresponding MAC address? So we have IP and MAC address mappings for some LAN nodes in this particular LAN, and it is given by this tuple given by IP address, MAC address, and TTL, which is the time to live field, and it is the time after which this address mapping will be forgotten. Okay, just imagine if you keep such a table and just keep all the entries as and when you just update it. So in that case, your table will become too long, and the search time is also going to increase, right? So that is why we have this time to live field, which basically tells that after this time to live field is the counter becomes 0, or the threshold is reached, or threshold is crossed, then after that the address mapping will be forgotten. So now let's see some examples of how the ARP protocol is used. So ARP protocol is address resolution protocol. You are trying to find out the MAC address of a given end system, or a given interface. Sorry. So in this example, A wants to send a datagram to B. Okay. So B's MAC address is not in A's ARP table. Therefore, A uses address resolution protocol to find B's MAC address. So this is similar to the situation that you had. So this is also same as the situation where suppose A had the information about B's MAC address, or the IP and MAC mapping, but then after some time the entry was deleted after the TTL value. So it has no mapping or no memory of what is the corresponding IP and MAC mapping for host B. Okay. So for this, it uses this ARP protocol, address resolution protocol, to find out what is the corresponding MAC address of B. Okay. So this is it. So first, what will A do? A will broadcast an ARP query containing B's IP address. Okay. So why it will broadcast? Because it does not know who is having who is the one in this particular connected link that is having this particular IP address, right? So what it will do? It will simply broadcast this information, and then with that information, it simply will inform everybody that whoever is having this IP address, please send me the corresponding MAC address, right? So the for this query, the ARP query, because it is a broadcast message, so the destination MAC address will of course be FFFF, right? And with this, all the nodes which are in the LAN, they will receive this query. So now this is now sent. Okay, so now what is this frame going to contain in its header? So the source MAC address is of course the MAC address of A, right? So 7165F7 2B0853. And what is the source IP address? The IP address of A, that is 137.196.7.23. And what is the target IP address? Target IP address of B is known. So that is 137.196.7.14. Okay. Now what will happen? All right. So this query was broadcast, but B is the one which is the intended recipient. So B, after getting this ARP query, it gets to know that somebody is inquiring about its MAC address. Right. So what B will do? B will reply back to A with an ARP response giving its MAC address. Right. So what it will do? It will simply send a ARP message into the Ethernet frame. Okay, so what will be the header look like for this frame? The target IP address is of course the IP address of A. Sorry, this was the one that has been sent. Okay, this is not the correct one. They should go like this. Okay. So now, when this message, let me go back. Okay, listen, this is not correct. Okay, this is the target IP address has been given as this itself. That is the address of B. Okay, so that is not correct. It should be the other way around. okay, because this time B is going to send it back to A, right? So this slide I will make the changes. It is a mistake here, okay? Alright. So now when A receives B's reply, what it will do? It will update its ARP table. So this is how it updates the ARP table, that is the IP address of B, that is 137.196.7.14. The corresponding MAC address is 5823D7 FA20B0, and the time to live for this entry is 500. Okay, so this is how, when B's MAC address is not known to A, then A will use ARP protocol to find out what is B's MAC address, and after that whatever packet it has to send from A to B, it will simply get the MAC address from this ARP table, and then it can transfer the data. Okay, now let's get to another example. That means right now we were doing it locally, right, in the same subnet. Now let's check if we can, not in the same subnet, it was in the same LAN, right? So now it is routing to another subnet, okay? So what do we want to do? We want to send a datagram from host A to host B via this router R, okay? So each one of them has an IP address and a corresponding MAC address, okay? So what are we assuming here? Here too we are assuming that A knows the IP address of B. A knows the IP address of the first hop router. Okay, so this question is, how does it know the IP address of the first hop router? So if you remember the last classes, you will know. How will A know about the IP address of the first hop router? So can anybody tell me the answer for this question? How will A know the IP address of the first hop router?
Ma'am, I will DHCP.
Yes, with the help of DHCP. Okay. Now, so how will A know R's MAC address? So similarly, it can know R's MAC address also. Now, okay. So now, if I want to send it to another subnet, then how will A send this? In first, it has to query like it was doing it in the previous case also. But what it is doing first? So it has to send IP is destination IP is there, so that is 222.222 and 2.222, and this IP source address is 111.111, etc. Okay, so these two information is there. Now what else is needed? Okay, with this information, what else is required when you, so at the network layer this information was given to you. That means what is the IP address of the source, what is the IP address of the destination. These were put into the header. Okay, now when it comes to the link layer, at that time, then the MAC address has to be correspondingly added. Okay, so what should be the MAC address in this case? It does not know the corresponding MAC address of B. Okay, but what does it know? It knows the routers, this connecting interfaces MAC address. We have already assumed that in the last slide, if you remember. Okay, it knows, A knows R's MAC address. That means this interface's MAC address is known to A. Then what it will do? The source address, source MAC address will be A's own MAC address, but the destination MAC address would be this interface's MAC address. Okay, now what will happen? So now let's see, when this message reaches R, or when this frame reaches R, then what happens? Okay, so it has now gone to the MAC layer where it is read that The destination address is of course this router, and the interface of this router, and now the destination address that it has to actually send the data to, send the frame to, is the destination address, is host B. So now in the network layer, this is found out that okay, the destination address is 222.222, and the IP address for the source is 111.111. Okay. So now what it will do? Now it is now what R will do? R will create a link layer frame that will contain A to B IP datagram and the frame destination address, that is the B's MAC address. So this is known, this is assumed that R definitely knows this B's MAC address. Okay. So in that case, it will simply put this MAC address here, destination address here, and then it will send the frame to the corresponding destination. This is how the frame reaches the destination B. Okay. And at the layer 3, that means the network layer, this corresponding uh, frame is now reaching the layer 3 as the datagram, and then the corresponding source and destination address are seen. And then correspondingly, whatever task is to be done, that is being done, okay, on that particular packet. Now, why we are doing this? We have seen that we want to uniquely identify a particular interface, okay, or a particular host. Now, let's get to some of the um, technologies or standards that and the technologies and their corresponding standards. Okay, so first, let us start with Ethernet. Okay, so Ethernet is the dominant wired LAN technology, and LAN as the local area network technology. You all know about Ethernet. You use it in your hostel rooms, in your house. Okay, mostly it is used in buildings. Okay, for a single building, if you want a connectivity, you can simply have a very small local area network, and then you can um, have a good connection. Okay, so this is known as the LAN technology. It can provide link rate of up to 10 Mbps to 400 Gbps. It is mostly used because it is very simple and it is quite cheap also. Okay, now let's see what is the physical topology of an Ethernet structure. Okay, so the first one, which is in general very popular, is known as the bus topology. Okay, so topology here simply means that how the hosts are connected with each other. Okay, so first one is the bus topology, and the medium used mostly here is coaxial cable. Okay, if you remember the very first uh, module of this course, okay, there we had talked about coaxial cables. Okay, that is a medium for transferring your data. So wired medium, of course. So bus topology is one of the most popular um, topologies. So what happens here? You have a single shared communication which is being shared by several hosts. Okay, so all of the nodes which are connected to this bus, they will be in the same collision domain. That means if at a time more than one of these hosts tries to send any packet at the same time or any data at the same time, then this might cause collision between between the data that has been sent. Okay, and it may lead to loss of data. Now there's another way of or another physical topology for Ethernet, which is known as the switch topology. So this looks like this. You have a switch, okay, So it is a link layer 2 device. Okay, so it is a link layer device. It only provides, so this will work only up to the link layer. Okay, the switch. It does not work up to how your router works up to the network layer. Okay, so it supports protocols only up to layer 2, and it is basically in the center, and it runs the Ethernet protocol. Okay, so that nodes or which are connected to this switch, their data does not collide with each other. Okay, so this switched topology, it is basically like it is acting as a central head which is controlling all of the issues related to collisions, related to transferring the frames, etc. Now let's see what is the frame structure of Ethernet. Okay, so what is this? The sending interface encapsulates the IP datagram or the or other network layer protocol packet in the Ethernet frame. Okay, so this is how the Ethernet frame will look like. What are the fields that we are going to have? Okay, so first is the preamble field, which is used to synchronize receiver and sender clock rates. Okay, so this is represented by 7 bytes of this value, and then it is followed by 1 byte of this 10101011. Okay, so this preamble is simply helping to synchronize with the receiver and sender clocks. Okay, so this is an example that has been given here as the second point. Now the destination address and the source address are given, of course. Then we have the type field, and then the data, which is nothing but the payload, and finally we have CRC. CRC is cyclic redundancy check, which is basically used to avoid any error. Okay, so you check it to see that if there is it is basically a check to see that whether there is any error or not in the frame that has been received. Okay, now let's see a little bit in detail. So these two are the addresses, the destination and the source addresses. So here, because remember we are dealing with layer 2 addresses, so therefore this will be MAC addresses, these two. Okay, now if the adapter receives the frame with matching destination address, um, or it receives a frame with broadcast address if it is in case of ARP, in case of an ARP query or an ARP packet, then it passes the data in the frame to the corresponding network layer protocol. Okay, if these two values are not there, okay, then of course if you don't know what is the destination, in that case there's no point in sending it further, so the adapter will discard the frame. Now what is the type field? Okay, so type field basically determines that what is the higher layer protocol, that means the layer higher to this one, that means what is the corresponding network layer protocol. Okay, so mostly we know that IP protocol is used. So some other protocols can also be used depending upon what is the application that we are considering. So for Apple Talk, I mean, we have the corresponding protocol. Then Novel IPX is also a corresponding protocol. Okay, so but in general we use the IP protocol in the type field, and it is used to demultiplex at the receiver. Finally is the CRC, that is the cyclic redundancy check, that is to find out that if there is an error that is there in the received frame, if an error is there, then the frame will be dropped. Now certain properties of Ethernet. So Ethernet is unreliable and connectionless. Okay. So first, let us start with connectionless as to why it is connectionless. So before starting any communication with our destination host, there is no preliminary communications that are done. Okay, like we were using in TCP, we were doing a particular handshaking before we could transfer data. Okay, whereas in case of Ethernet, this is not happening. Such kind of a handshaking does not happen between the sending and receiving network interface cards. So it is unreliable because the network interface card at the receiver end does not respond with the with any ACK or NAC. Okay, so it does not send any ACK or NAC frames to the sender NIC. So how will somebody know that whether there is whether the packet that has been sent has actually been received or not? This is the reason why we were doing all kinds of different reliable data transfer protocols in case of transport layer protocols. Okay, we were seeing in case of TCP that what are the different types of reliable data transfer protocols and how they are working, etc. At that time, we had read about this and we had said that okay, we are using TCP because there can be some error and that may not be resolved using lower layer protocols. Okay, so in case of Ethernet also, you can see that the NICs, they do not give any kind of reliable data transfer, nor are they connection oriented. Now, what is the corresponding MAC protocol that should be used in case of Ethernet? So, as per the standard of Ethernet, that is 802.3. Okay. So, the MAC protocol that is used is unslotted CSMA CD. Okay, with binary exponential backoff. Okay. So here it is. So if you remember in the last class, we had actually studied about CSMA CD. So the question here is, why are we using CSMA CD? We had studied many MAC protocols. Okay, we had studied Aloha, slotted Aloha, CSMA, CSMA CA, and CSMA CD. Why is CSMA CD being chosen here as a MAC protocol? Okay, can anybody answer this question? What is so unique about CSMA CD that it is being used in case of Ethernet? If you remember the last class, then you will be able to answer this question. No answers? Okay. What is CSMA CD? It is carrier sense multiple access with collision detection. Okay. And if we do collision detection, it's always better, right? Because you are detecting that there's a collision and then stopping from further transmission, right? That was collision CSMA with collision detection. Now Ethernet is using CSMA with collision detection. Okay, so when we had studied about CSMA CA, implementing CSMA CA and CSMA CD in the last class, we had talked about that, when it comes to wired topologies, in that case CSMA CD is better than CSMA CA. But in case of wireless topologies, in that case, or wireless mediums, in that case, CSMA CA is better than CSMA CD. Okay. Now, again, somebody remembers this. Why is that so? When I had spoken about this, I was very particular about saying that this is very important.
Collision detection is easier in wired networks than wireless.
Why is it easier? Any thoughts on that?
I don't know.
Think about it. Why is collision detection easier in case of wired medium than that of wireless medium? Okay. Think about the topology that you have just seen, the Ethernet topologies that we just saw. We have bus
Ma'am,
topology that we used to have earlier. Yeah.
in case of wired medium, there the energy would double if there is collision. Like two signals are passing at the same time, then the energy may be double, and that may be detected in the case of wired medium.
It may be detected, but why the detection becomes, I mean, why is it easier to detect in case of, I understand the energy part here, but still why it is, I still need some more point on this. Okay, it has to be a little more crisp than what you said. So energy can be there in case of wireless network also, na? So um, why it is easier in case of wired than wireless? So I'll just give you a hint here. Think about the medium that you are using. What is the topology that is being used? And how does the external environment affect any transmission? Okay. So with all these three hints, I think you can get the answer. Okay. All right. Now let me go further. You can think about the answer as a homework. Now, let us get to the Ethernet standards. Okay, so I was talking about 802.3. I just told some time back that this is the standard that is used in case of Ethernet. Okay, so this 802.3 standard, this is link, and this just says about the link and physical, or specifies the link layer and physical layer protocols. Okay, what are the corresponding changes that should, or what are the corresponding steps that should be taken corresponding to link layer and physical layer protocols. Okay, so this 802.3 standard is, if you see the RFCs, or if you just simply Google 802.3, then also you will find out that this is not a single standard. Okay, now there have been some versions that have come up for this 802.3. Okay, so these are versions that have come up with some enhancements on this original 802.3. They give different data rates, okay, corresponding to 2 Mbps, 10 Mbps, 100 Mbps, up to 40 Gbps. Okay, and this data rate is received with the help of the what is the different medium that you are choosing. Okay, so we have many different Ethernet standards. Some so they have some common MAC protocol, and they have same frame format. Okay, the common frame format and common MAC protocol. What is the change? They are getting different data rates. Okay, how they are getting different data rates? If they are considering different mediums, if it is 100 base TX, these are the types of cables that are being used. Okay, so first one, this 100 base TX, 100 base T2, and 100 base T4. These are twisted pair copper wires. Okay, and these rest of them, that is 100 base FX, 100 base BX, and 100 base SX, these are optical fiber specifications. Okay, so different types which are generally used as a medium. Okay, so if in the file layer you are having these three, then your data rate is going to be a little towards the lower range, up to 100 Mbps. And if it is towards the optical fiber, if you're using optical fiber, then you're of course the data rate that you are going to get is of course towards the higher side. All right, so Ethernet is done. Now let's get to switches. Okay, so what is a switch? So as I was talking about Ethernet topology, we came up with the switch topology, right? So that was a device, and I told that it is a layer 2 device. Okay, so switch is a layer 2 or a link layer device, and it basically helps in storing and forwarding Ethernet frames. Okay, That is one task. And the second task is that it examines incoming, whatever incoming frame is there, it examines the MAC address of the incoming frame and selectively forwards the frame to one or more outgoing links. If it's a broadcast, it has to be there through all the outgoing links, right, in the same interface, and sorry, in the same subnet. And then so you selectively forward the frame to one or more outgoing links when the frame is to be forwarded on the segment. Okay, and then it uses CSMS CD to access the segment. And it is said to be transparent because the host is unaware of the presence of switches. Host does not know that there is a switch present between the host and the destination, and it is known as a plug and play kind of a device. Okay, so you do not need to configure the switch. You simply attach the switch with your interface and then connect it, have a connected outgoing interface, and then correspondingly the frame will be forwarded. All right. So what are the properties that switch actually provides? Okay, it provides multiple simultaneous transmissions. Okay, so the hosts, they have dedicated direct connection to switch, as you can see here. Okay, we have dedicated direct connection to switch. The packets that are arriving at the switch, they are buffered. Okay, so of course we should have corresponding buffers in the switch so that it can buffer the packets that are arriving from the different hosts that are attached to it. And then Ethernet protocol is used on each of these incoming links. Okay, why it is used? So that the collisions are avoided. Okay, and full duplex communication can be allowed so that both sides communications can happen at the same time, and also each link is its own collision domain. Okay, so this is the full duplex communication that's happening. So switching from A to A dash and B to B dash can transmit simultaneously without any collisions. So because of these properties of switches, these collisions are avoided. Okay. Now, we could see that A to A dash and B to B dash was easy to happen. Okay, this could happen, that could happen with full duplex communication, and collision was not happening. Okay, but what about A to A dash and C to A dash? Okay, that means the destination here is the same. Okay, so in that case, of course, collision will happen. It cannot happen simultaneously, right? So that is the scenario. If you have different source and destinations, you can have a simultaneous communication in this case. Okay. Now, next question. How does the switch know that A dash is reachable via interface 5, via interface 4, sorry, and B dash is reachable via interface 5? This is a valid question. If somebody has to send a frame to their corresponding hosts, destination hosts, they should be knowing that how or what should be the corresponding port through which it should be forwarded, right? Because if you remember, this forwarding thing we had learnt in the network layer only. If the layer 2 switch does not have any, if the layer 2 switch only works about layer up to layer 2, how will it know that what is the corresponding interface to which it needs to be forwarded? The frame needs to be forwarded, right? So what do we have? How do we resolve this issue? Okay, so each switch has a switch table. Okay, so what is it? It's so simply each switch has a table which has entries in it. So what are the entries? It will have MAC address of host and the interface to reach that host along with the timestamp. Okay, like similar to what we just saw and similar to our routing tables. Okay, so you have the MAC address and the corresponding host MAC address and the corresponding interface through which it needs to be forwarded along with the timestamp. Okay, and how do we create and maintain this switch table? Okay, so when you just saw the properties of switch, there was something written there that is self-learning. I did not tell that at that time because I think in the previous slides it is there. Okay, anyways, you will see that in the slide later on. It's going back too much. Okay, so there was something called self-learning. Okay, a switch is actually self-learning. So what is this and how does it help in actually finding out that what should be the corresponding interface? Okay, so a switch learns which hosts can be reached through which interfaces. Okay, so how does it do that? A wants to send some data. So the source address is A and the destination address is A dash. So now the switch table, so which is corresponding initially which is empty. So that means so no entry is there about A or A dash. Okay. So first thing what the switch will do, the switch will have to learn the location of the sender. Okay. So from the incoming LAN segment, it found out that, oh, so this one has been received from interface A and its source address is, sorry, it has been received at interface 1 and its source address is A. So that means if it is coming from interface A and has a MAC source MAC address as A, then this is the corresponding entry and the TTL is 60 for that. Okay, so for the unit 60 seconds or 60 minutes is, yeah, okay, it will keep it for that much amount of time and then it will erase that particular entry. Okay, so it is recorded in the switch table. Okay, now similarly whenever there is a frame received at the switch, then it will record the entry in the switch table. And whenever, suppose like this, it will keep learning. And whenever there is some data, it will simply forward it further, okay, through that corresponding interface. Okay. Now, frame filtering and forwarding. So what happens when a frame is received at the switch? So what's happening? First of all, as we just saw, we record the incoming link, the MAC address of the sending host. Okay. Now what will happen? You index the switch table using the MAC destination address. If the entry is found for destination, then what do you need to check? That if the destination on the segment from which the frame has arrived. Okay, if it is from the if the destination is on the same segment from which the frame has arrived, then you drop that frame. Otherwise, you forward the frame on the interface that has been indicated by the entry. Otherwise, what you do? Otherwise, you know that you have to flood it to all others except the one from which it has been the frame has arrived. Okay. So this is how the forwarding and filtering of frames actually happens. Okay. Now, all right. So it's already 3:56. So I think I'm out of time today. So I will stop the class here. And if you have any questions, you can ask.